ISP basically states that documents on their face need to comply. Right? 12 subclauses, you see. We basically state that documents on their face need to comply. When to use the standby LCs? There are a number of situations a standby LC would be a good option. One is perhaps the worst reason you have difficulty presenting a credit confirmed documents under a regular LC and want to make your life easier. Then you can go for a standby LC. Very difficult to present compliant documents. So might as well, if you have a very good relationship with the buyer and the seller, then you can go for a standby LC. So that means you will do the business. If something goes wrong, it will be covered by under the standby LC. Right? Can you give me another very good option for any payment method, which is fantastic to have a standby LC and do the transaction under that payment method? What is the best option to cover the risk in a particular payment method? What is that payment method? Standby LC is a very good option.
Advance payment guarantee.
Pardon?
Advance payment guarantee for advance payment method.
No. I'm asking the question. There are how many payment methods, in international trade?
4.
Out of 4, what is the standby LC is the best option to cover the risk in one of the payment methods rather than opening LC, and which will make your life easier.
Collection DP, sir?
Collection, no.
Open account?
Open account? Open account. Open account transaction is routed with not through the bank, directly from the seller to buyer. That's it. If the buyer doesn't pay a default, the payment, then the seller is at a risk. So in a scenario like this, to have a standby LC to cover the transactions, the entire transaction for a period of time, if you say 6 months or 1 year, is the best option. You do the transaction. If you perform well, if the buyer pays the money on a regular basis, no issue, it will go on. And only if there's a default, then only this will start to operate. Right? The standby LC will be a good alternative, as claiming under a standby LC is much easier than under a documentary LC. Right? Standby LC will be a good alternative because claiming under a standby LC is much easier than under a documentary trade. Right? However, there's a bit of a risk here. A standby LC is a first demand payment guarantee. It's a first demand payment guarantee. And the exporter does not have to prove documentary wise that he actually shipped anything. He doesn't have to prove anything. Right? Perhaps better reason, you want to engage into an open account relationship and there is a certain trust level between the parties. However, you want to have additional security, not unlike an insurance. In such a case, standby LC is a good alternative. Right? We were talking about this over and over. Right? What documents to ask for? What documents to ask for? Right? When you are the seller, the correct answer to below question should be as little as possible. Standard would be an invoice plus claim letter, basically stating that the counterparty did not fulfill his contractual obligations and therefore you would claim XXX amount. So the documents are very simple. Normally the standard claim is invoice plus claim letter. Right? For the buyer issuing the standby LC would also argue that the claim letter should mention to what particular part of the contract the applicant did not fulfill. Right? In this way, you can limit, somewhat limit that the beneficiary would claim full standby LC amount for a minor issue. Right? I think with your experiences, you can see how this is happening. Now, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? In case you will switch from documentary LCs, document letter of credit, to semi-open account, you will notice that it will have an immediate effect on your cash flow plan. Right? LC cash flow planning is a bit of a difficult thing, but open account, there's no cash flow planning. You receive the goods, you will sell the goods, and then you will pay. With LCs, there will be, in most cases, a clear maturity payment date. Clear maturity date, payment date. You present credit confirmed documents and the payment date is set. Right? With a standby LC, you are going back to the open account rear. For instance, payment end of month, 30 days after having received the invoice, or worst case, the guy who is supposed to sign is on holiday, etc., and we will pay you next week. Because there's no permanent, strict payment date is set under the standby LCs or even under open account. Right? Therefore, when switching to do account for payment delays. On the back of the last point made regarding the payment delays, make sure the lifetime of a standby LC caters for the last maturity of your payment plus a bit of extra time. When you are fixing the deadline for the payment, right? This is how we are going to do it. Another issue to look out for when dealing with perhaps less scrupulous counterparts, in case you will use the standby LC in combination with an open account payment. It could happen that at payment date, the funds are not in your account, which you will probably only notice the first day thereafter. When contacting the buyer, you will probably receive a nice excuse that something went wrong and he will pay as soon as possible. Make sure that you will actually have sufficient time to lodge a claim under the standby LC, and please check beforehand. Right? Sometimes this is what practical scenario of how the buyers will react. Right? Okay. What to look for in a standby LC? When to issue a standby LC, we have to check for the expiry date, right? Expiry date. That is whether we have enough time, right? Because we have to do the payment. When you are claiming, you have to see whether we have enough time. Then expiry place. Where does your claim need to be before 5 o'clock at Friday afternoon, before the bank closes, right? You have to submit your claim. If the last moment, if the expiry date is today or tomorrow, today is Sunday. If the expiry date is Monday, then tomorrow Sunday, day after tomorrow, that is Monday is 10th, no 9th. If the expiry date is on 9th, so you have to submit the claim. You have to submit the claim to the bank before 5 o'clock on that particular date. Right? Again, අපි banking hours කියලා banking hours again we open the bank for public 9 to 5. So whatever the things the public are involving, it has to be within the banking hours. Right? එහෙම නැත්නම් රෑ 12ට ගියනලා එහෙම අපිට වෙලා තියෙනවා. I'm telling you with experience. 9th is a final day. 9th, about 11:30 p.m. 11:30 p.m. Then what's the date? 9 mother when is the 11:30 p.m. Can 11:30 p.m. is coming under 9th. That's what I'm asking.
No.
No. Why? Why?
It is outside of regular working hours.
Outside the regular working hours. Banking hours. Nothing 11:59. It's coming under 9th. Right? But the bank is closed. Take a 17 5 o'clock. Right? If the banks are open after 7, 9, 8 o'clock, then it's okay. Right? Okay. Is there any dependency on the applicant to claim? That means applicant's certificate. Whether he has submitted certificate. Is there and no claim before date in the claim conditions? Right? Even though they have given a claim date, is there a conditions that you have to check? No claim before date. Right? Then what are the underlying rules and what effect does it have on the claiming? Right? What claim format is allowed? Usually, no fax or email claims are allowed unless the standby LC says otherwise. Who pays the charges? And is the standby LC confirmed? Right? Do you need a confirm? Those questions. things you have to check. Right? In conclusion, a standby LC can make your life easier, but make sure you keep track of all timelines and keep the claims process simple. Right? When compared to most other form of bank guarantees, the standby LCs offers a level playing field to both applicant and the beneficiary. Cost of a standby versus a regular LC are usually lower, but keep an eye out for late payments and missing interest as a result of this. Right? So here I have discussed with you very briefly, what is standby LC and how we should look at those things. Right? Your you have responsibilities that we have to now check. Now all this time it's only a preamble. I've discussed with you a brief introduction. Now we'll go into detailed discussion of the articles, right? Okay. Any questions on the introduction? Any questions on the introduction?
So what are the instances that we use standby letter of credits, sir?
What are the
Instances that we use standby letter of credits?
good? Very good question. Who is that?
Shanika, sir.
Sir? What are the instances where we are using the bank guarantees? Tell me. What are the instances where we are using the bank guarantees? Shanika or any other person in the group? All are free to answer. Bank guarantees? What are the instances that we issue bank guarantees? Tell me. Bank guarantees now. June 26th, we have done. June 26th, we have done bank guarantees. Tell me some examples. What are the instances we issue bank guarantees?
For supply service or supply and or buy for service or goods.
Right. All those things. I have taught you straightforward names. The instances.
Type. You mean type of bank guarantees?
Yeah. The same thing.
Bonds, bid bonds,
Bid
performance
bonds, performance bonds, then
advance
advance payment bonds, then
custom guarantees,
custom guarantees, counter guarantees, then
retention
guarantees, insurance standby, insurance guarantees, and all those things. Right? All those types are equally applicable to standby LCs. Only the name is different. Now, Shanika, have I given the answer?
Yes, sir. My problem is why if the buyer is defaulting, same as it will be act as those guarantees that we issue.
Pardon?
This will act as the guarantees that we normally issue.
Same as a guarantee.
Yeah, same as a guarantee. If
Same as a
the
guarantee.
if the buyer defaults and the bank is getting the responsibility to pay the seller.
Yeah,
The
to
seller.
pay to the seller or the
Right.
beneficiary.
Yes. Now in here, sir, it is kind of a little bit risk to the bank, if we do know the buyer properly.
Okay. Okay. We are discussing the practical things. This is what we want to discuss because you are not DABF guys, no? You are in DIT and you are in the operations, right? Shanika has opened up a very useful area. Now, is it a risk to issue a bank guarantee? Is it a risk to issue a bank guarantee to the bank? Ajit, Shanika?
No.
No. No.
We because we hold cash margin. No.
Right. I asked you one question, but you answered the second part. Right? There is a risk. There is a risk by issuing bank guarantees. How we are going to mitigate the risk? You are going to take a cash margin or some other collateral. Some other collateral. So here also, under standby LC is also the same thing. Either cash or some other collateral. Otherwise, when you give an irrevocable undertaking, you have to pay. The risk is there. The risk is there. Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. If you don't have any other questions, now we'll go for the ISP 98 articles. But here, I have given the articles. I'm discussing certain articles. Only thing is,
Excuse me, sir.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Both standby LC and bank guarantees are same. What the reason issuing standby LC instead of bank guarantee?
May I know speaking?
I'm Ajit.
Ajit, what's the reason why we are issuing standby LCs instead of bank guarantees?
Yes.
Can
anybody answer that question?
Bank guarantee is governed by local law, where standby LC is governed by UCP 600 or ISP 98.
Right. Okay. Then in that case, any bank in any country, we do transaction on UCP 600. We do transaction on URC 522. We do transaction on URR 725, URDJ 758. We do that. Why only bank guarantees we are bothered? Tell me. What is why we are going for standby LCs instead of bank guarantees? What is your personal experience, personal practice in your banks? Are you issuing standby LCs or bank guarantees in our respective banks?
Bank guarantee, sir.
Bank guarantees. We issue bank guarantees, right? So bank guarantees are acceptable under local law as well as International Chamber of Commerce URDG 758. So we can do the transactions as per that, right? But standby LCs are governed only by ISP 98. ISP 98. And the other question is, Ajit, you are the one who asked this question.
Yes.
Certain countries, certain European countries, as well as America, 100%. According to their local law, they cannot issue bank guarantees. They cannot issue bank guarantees. They can issue only standby LCs. That is why they are issuing. But in countries like Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, right? This standby LCs are not needed because the purpose of getting a thing done under a standby LCs can be easily done through bank guarantee, right? It is acceptable one instrument. We'll go for the bank guarantees. We'll go for the bank guarantees, right? Otherwise, conceptually, it is same. Conceptually, it is same. Even personally, I'm also prefer to issue bank guarantee. That we have been used to that, right? ISP 98 account with me issue karna. Even though if any issues, we'll have to refer to URDG 758. Right? Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Right. Then we'll try to discuss the ISP 98 articles, right? I'm not going into detail, but certain things are a little bit detailed because we have to hurry up. ISP 98 rules are grouped together under 10 generic headings. Now, ISP 98 rules under the IC regulations are grouped together under the 10 generic headings. Can you please go through the 10 headings? Please. You understand? Right. ISP 98 rules are grouped together under 10 generic headings. One is number one is general provisions, obligations, presentations, examination, blah, blah, blah. We have gone through the thing. So we have 10 rules and with these headings, subheadings, right? Okay. Let's start discussing the rule number 1. But again, I will repeat, right? I'm not going to discuss everything, right? But important areas I will discuss, right? I tried my best to get this ISP 98 in the soft copy, but I couldn't, right? I have normally every class I used to give them a hard copy. Yeah, I have a hard copy. Can somebody try after the class, right, to go to Google and look for how to try to get a copy of ISP 98 rules, right? if you manage, send it to me also. Then I can upload it in the system. Right? Agreed? Let's see who is the good volunteer. Then it's good for everybody. But my presentation will cover the most of the important things. Right? Right. Rule number 1. Put it in different colors because just to strike it, right? The important areas. Rule number 1 is the general provisions. The scope and the application of these rules, right? That's what we are going to discuss, the scope and the application of these rules. That is, to stand by letter of credit of any form, however named or described, and whether or whatever for, or whether for international use or domestic use. International use or domestic use. Right. These rules are intended to be applied to standby LCs, including performance, financial, and direct pay standby LCs. Right? We discussed Sanita, she's the one who asked that question. On what grounds we issue standby LCs? We issue standby LCs on bid bonds, performance bonds, and advance payment, blah, blah, everything, right? And some are financial. Financial in the sense, we give an undertaking to a sister company by a parent company, covering the facilities granted to that particular party, the sister company, the financial guarantee, financial standby, right? Or direct pay, like open account, right? So in simple, the standby practices, international standby practices, ISP 98, is intended to be applied to any standby LC. A standby LC or other similar undertaking, however named or described, whether for domestic or international use, may be made subject to these rules by express reference to them. What do you mean by that? Whether it's local or international, domestic or international. When we issue a standby LC, we have to mention that it is subject to ISP 98. In other words, subject to these rules by express reference to them. Express reference is, we have to say, it is subject to ISP 98. Right? An undertaking subject to these rules may let's stand by. Maybe 1 minute. Right. An undertaking subject to these rules may expressly modify or exclude their application. Right? Okay. thought of discussing this, at least to discuss these things with you, because I'm getting calls from not only the practitioners in trade, sometimes they will give my name to their um, legal department, their lawyers, right, bank lawyers, and when they receive LC under ISP 98, then their problem is whether to accept it or not, whether to perform subject to ISP 98. So what they will do is they will refer it to, everybody wants to wash their hands. They will refer it to their legal department, get for clarification, a sanction. Legal department doesn't know anything about it, head or tail about ISP 98. The wrong thing that these people are doing. They don't know head or tail of ISP 98 because they can't understand. Then they'll ask the department, can you send us a ISP 98 rules? They have the branch is having a ISP 98 rules. They send it to the legal department. And when the lawyers go through this, even then they can't understand anything. The next question they'll ask the department is there anybody we can discuss these matters? Yes, madam, I'll give you our lecturer's name. He's a good person. You can talk to him. And I'm getting calls from their legal departments. මට මේ වෙන දේවල් මම කියන්නේ මාව අතාරින්න නැතුව මේ අහගෙන කුණු කොට වලට මාවත් පටලව ගන්නවා. I never say no to anybody. That's my weakness. Otherwise, I don't have anything to do with the legal department. Right? If you have any questions, I will answer till midnight. Because you are my student. Right? Everything, mama back here නැතුව මම ඒ විසඳ තෝ කරනවා. ඒකෙන්ද ඔයගොල්ලෝ ටිකක් හරි දැනගෙන ඉන්න ඕන. For you to go and sit with the legal department and then discuss these rules. If they have any gray areas, if they ask you certain things, you should be able to do it. That is a value added, or it's a value addition you are going to give to their bank, right? Right. These rules supplement the applicable law to the extent not prohibited by that law. Right? Law එකක් තියෙනවා නම් මේක prohibit වෙන්නේ ඒක වෙනවා. These rules supersede conflicted provisions in any other rules or practices to which a standby LC is also made subject. Right? These rules supersede conflicting provisions in any other rules or practices. Like UCP 600 or this ISP 98 will supersede everything under standby LCs, right? Can you read this set of rules? Still, we are discussing the rule number 1. Can you read it? I'm looking for a ISP 98. Right. Unless the context otherwise, unless the context otherwise requires, or unless expressly modified or excluded, these rules apply as terms and conditions incorporated into a standby, confirmation, advice, or nomination, or amendment, transfer, request for issuance, or other agreement. In other words, the general provisions, under the general provisions, this ISP 98 will cover any aspect of standby LCs, like standby confirmation, advice, nomination, amendment, everything under a LC, under UCP 600, same everything we can do under the standby LCs also. So if you do it normal way under UCP 600, again, yes, we can do it, right? If you say standby letter of credit subject to UCP 600, then this transfer, confirmation, and nomination, amendment, all those things, the UCP relevant articles will apply. But if you say, if the LC says subject to ISP 98, then this ISP 98 will apply. These 10 articles will apply, covering all those steps, right? These rules do not define or otherwise provide for power or authority to issue a standby, formal requirement for execution of a standby, or defenses to honor based on fraud, abuse, or similar matters. These matters are left to applicable law. What is this applicable law? Frauds and all, it depends on applicable law. What is this applicable law? It gives a limitation of responsibility. It gives a limitation of responsibility, right? What is this applicable law?
Law of the seller's country.
Law of the country. Law of the country, right? Whether it's seller or buyer, it depends on how you have worded the sales contract. In the sales contract, you have to say under the jurisdiction of UK or Sri Lanka. Right? The seller ge jurisdiction එක but not always. It's not a must, but a majority of the time it will be on seller's country, seller's jurisdiction. We mentioned that. Why? Why is that? Can somebody give me a reason for that? Why we always under the jurisdiction of seller's country? Think.
Because the risk is on the side of the seller when it comes to default of a payment.
Yeah. On top of that, step 1 එක පොඩ්ඩක් හිතන්න. ඕනම transaction එක step 1 එක මොකද්ද? What is the step 1 of any transaction? LC, open account, advance
Contract between the parties.
Who prepares a contract? In majority case, 98%. Who prepares a contract?
Seller.
So obviously, when seller is preparing the contract, he will put the law applicable to his country, right? ඒක තමයි අපි හැමතිස්සම ඒක කියන්නේ. True, the seller is having a risk because he is parting with the goods, and sometimes he might not receive the money. So it's an issue for him, but he is the one who is preparing the contract. So he always says, subject to or the subject jurisdiction under blah 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 his country's name, right? Still rule number 1: a standby is an irrevocable, independent, documentary and binding undertaking when issued and need not to state an issuer is not responsible for, right? It is an irrevocable and independent, documentary and binding undertaking when issued, right? So therefore, they are need not to state that then issuer. Issuer, who is the issuer? Who is the issuer?
Bank.
Applicant bank, right? Applicant bank. So it says no need to say an issuer is not responsible for, issuer not responsible for performance or breach of any underlying transaction. Can you understand that A? What's the meaning of that? Sumudhu, you are silent? These are very common questions I am asking, like general knowledge, common sense. Right? Why the issuer is not responsible for the performance or breach of any underlying transaction. The issuer is not responsible. The bank is not responsible.
That's again related to the seller's contract.
Seller's contract. Simple. Between them, they had. So, underlying transaction is that. So, if they get a claim, they will pay. On demand, they will get a. If they get a claim, they will pay. The same thing happens under the bank guarantee also. Always think. Put the bank guarantee. Replace, cut and paste around the bank guarantee. May place a certain. It's under bank guarantee. Australia ISP 98. You got my easy way out. Bank guarantees, you know everything. You people, because you are doing that. Accuracy, genuineness, or effect of any document presented under the standby. Bank is not responsible. Right? Whoever the guy who is submitting, they are responsible. Action or omission of others, even if the other person is chosen by the issuer or nominated person, or observance of law or practice other than that chosen the standby or applicable at the place of issuance. Okay. Standby LC refers to the type of independent undertaking. Standby LC refers to the type of independent undertaking for which these rules were intended, whereas standby refers to an undertaking subject to these rules. Now, is normal LCs are also an independent undertaking? Is it an independent undertaking? Normal LCs? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Same thing. It is independent undertaking against the sales contract. Right? We only rely on the terms and conditions of the LC. Right? Okay. Rule number 2, obligations. Rule number 2 is the obligations. An issuer undertakes to the beneficiary to honor a presentation that appears on its face, to comply with the terms and conditions of the standby in accordance with these rules, supplemented by standard standby practice. Right? What do you mean by that? The issuer, that's an issuing bank, will give an undertaking, it undertakes to the beneficiary, right? To honor a presentation that appears on its face to comply with the terms and conditions of the standby, right? Same as the LC. An issuer honors a compliant presentation. An issuer honors a compliant presentation made to it by paying the amount demanded of it at sight, unless the standby provides for honor by acceptance of a draft drawn by the beneficiary on the issuer, or by deferred payment, or deferred payment of a demand made by the beneficiary on the issuer, or by negotiation. LC ke tinna mekama thamai. An issuer honors a compliant presentation made to it by paying the amount demanded. If they received a claim, right, then they will honor that claim by paying the amount demanded of it at site. Immediately they will pay. Immediately they will pay. Right? Unless the standby provides to honor for acceptance, or unless the standby says you can pay on a deferred payment method. That means, okay, you can record it and you can keep it, but you can pay it after 30 days or after 60 days, deferred payment. But unless otherwise, all these things, what do you call this? If there's a claim, we'll have to see if it is within the expiry date and all to pay, right? Whether it's deferred payment or site, deferred payment or site. But this majority of these claims are having not deferred payment. Majority are having issues of paying at site. Immediately they'll have to pay. Right? So, කොහොමුණත් ඒවා ගෙවන්න වෙනවා, whether it's site or deferred. Okay. Rule number 2, read it. We are discussing on various obligations of the parties. First, we discuss the obligations of the issuing bank. Now, confirming bank. I'm on the confirming bank. Read this carefully. The second point is also very, very valid. Right? First you read, then we'll discuss. Finish? Okay. A confirmer, that is a confirming bank, undertakes to honor the compliant presentation made to it by paying the amount demanded of it at site. Now, if we like a normal LC, the same thing. Same thing. Normal LC වගේම ඔලුවට ගන්න. එතකොට මේ පාට පටින් දැන් පිටිය ස්ට්‍රයික් වෙන නමුත් මේ ඒක ඔක්කොම ඔලුවට ගන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට කෙලින්ම black and white ඔලුවේ තියාගෙන ඉන්න පුළුවන්. Right? When a confirming bank undertakes to honor a compliant presentation, because that's how when they add confirmation, they are giving a additional guarantee as the issuing bank. So based on that, if there's a claim, a complaint presentation, they will pay. They will pay, right? Another thing is, if the confirmation permits presentation to the issuer, then a lot of places, this is what is happening. The confirming bank will submit the documents to the issuing bank, right? Then the issuing bank wrongfully dishonor. The payment but the issuing bank wrongfully dishonor. So even the confirming bank is not accepting their whatever the procedures these people have taken off, right? They have just rejected. That's wrongfully done. Then, if you have added confirmation, then you can't escape from your duty. Then confirming bank has to pay. Then confirming bank has to pay if they think that that's perfectly, correctly drawn. If the standby permits presentation to the confirmer, then the issue undertakes also to honor upon issuer undertakes also to honor upon the confirmer's wrongful dishonor by performing as if the presentation had been made to the issuer. Right? Second part and the third part. Can somebody give me in simple words, in your words, what do you mean by that? Nothing. UCP එකත් එක මේකත් කටපාඩම් කරන්න බෑනේ ගන්න. අපිට ඔලුවට විතරක් ගන්න points ටික ඔලුවට ගන්න. If you keep the better if you can keep a printout with you in your office drawers, so in case if there's anything that at least you can refer. Right? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට හම්බුනොත් මේකත් print කරලා තියාගන්න. Very difficult to download it. What's the difference between second point and the third point? The second point says red again the What is that? Come on, we are wasting time. Majid? Shanika? If the issuer wrongfully dishonor, that means issuing bank wrongfully dishonor, then as a confirming bank, you are obliged to pay. Right? If you think it's perfect, you have to pay. The third point, it's opposite of this. When we submit to the confirming bank, right, we reject the document. Confirming bank will reject the document. Then they will send the documents to the issuing bank. Then the issuing bank, they will check, and if they found the documents are in order, perfectly in order, then they will pay. Even though against the confirmers, wrongful dishonor. Right? Even that guy refused it. Issuing bank is the ultimate paying bank. They can't escape. If it is confirmed, and if the documents are complying with the terms and conditions of the LC, then they have to, right? Under the obligation, a standby may nominate a person. Here the person is a nominated bank to advise, receive a presentation, effect a transfer, confirm, pay, blah, blah. Nomination does not obligate the nominated person to act except to the extent that the nominated person undertakes to act. Right? A nominated person is not authorized to bind the persons making the nomination. Because that means a nominated person is not authorized to bind the person making the nomination. Making the nomination by issuing bank, so it's similar to LCs. And the nominated person, the nominating nominated bank, is not authorized to bind the person making the authorization. Unless an advice states otherwise, it signifies that advisor has checked the apparent authenticity of the advice message in accordance with the standard letter of credit practice. It's a normal thing. When we advise the copy, right? If the advisor has checked the apparent authenticity of the advice message in accordance with the standard letter of practice, and the advice accurately reflects what has been received, right? A standby may expressly state that it is subject to automatic amendment by an increase or decrease in the amount available. Standby may expressly state that it is subject to automatic amendment by an increase or decrease in the amount available. An extension of the expiration date is the basis for the automatic amendment to be effective without any further notification or consent. That means subject to the expiry date, right? these automatic amendments can be accepted, right? If there is no provision for the automatic amendment, if there is no provision for the automatic amendment, that is as per the LC, standby LC conditions, an amendment binds the issuer when it leaves the issuer's control and the confirmer, when it leaves the confirmer's control. The beneficiary must consent the amendment for it to be binding. Right? The same thing like normal LC. The moment they, in the normal LCs, the moment they issue the advice of, amendment, right? The moment they issue the amendment, the issuing bank is obliged to honor, obliged to. Here also the same thing, same concept, only in different words. Rule 3. Rule 3 is the presentation. Rule 3 is the presentation. A standby should indicate the time, place, and location. Within that place, person to whom and medium in which presentation should be made. If so, presentation must be so made in order to comply. What do you mean by that? Right? So, rule number 3 addresses one of the more difficult problems with which issuer of standby letter of credit have to contain. Right? The standby should indicate the time, place, and the location. Within that place, person to whom and medium in which presentation should be made. Even the presentation, even in LCA, you have to see give the medium, right? If so, presentation must be so made in order to comply. To the extent that the standby does not so indicate, presentation must be made in the accordance with those rules in order to be compliant. Right? The receipt of a document required by and presented under standby constitute a presentation requiring examination for compliance. Constitute a presentation requiring examination for compliance with the terms and conditions of the standby, even if not all of the required documents have been presented. Okay. A presentation must identify the standby under which the presentation is made. Right? Make it put down. The presentation must identify the standby under which the presentation is made. Now, here, one important thing which I have missed in my presentation. Can you jot down this thing, in terms of UCP 600, Article 36, there is force majeure, right? Banks need not honor their obligations under documented credit that expires during a force majeure event, and where no presentation was possible, right? During due to a force majeure event, if they cannot do the if they cannot honor the payment, for example, due to COVID-19 pandemic, entire area is locked down. So beyond their control, it's a force majeure case, acts of God. Then you are not responsible because there no presentation was possible. Because of that, customer cannot present the documents to the bank, even though he wants it. This type of provision would not be equitable in default situations, which are the rationale for the issuance of standby letter of credit. Now, accordingly, as per ISP 98, Rule 3.14a, ISP 98 Rule 3.14a, right, makes provision for presentation to be made up to 30 calendar days after the issuer reopens for business. Now, under a force majeure case, if the bank is closed, I am talking about normal LC method, right? Due to force majeure case, bank is closed. When can we submit the documents to the bank? We were unable to submit the documents due to force majeure. So when can we submit the documents to the bank? When can we submit the documents to the bank?
First day open for normal bank.
Yes, perfect. The first day open for normal banking, right? That you understand. But in under ISP 98, you can make the payment. Not the payment. Sorry, the presentation. Yeah, the provision for presentation to be made up to 30 calendar days after the issuer reopens for business. That's a big change. According to normal LC, the first calendar day after reopening. Here, you have a provision to submit the documents, right? Up to 30 calendar days after that, issuer reopens for business. Is it clear? Right? Right. Rule number 3 continued. To comply, a presentation must be made at the place and in location at that place indicated in the standby or provided in these rules. Right? If no place of presentation to the issuer is indicated in the standby, a presentation to the issuer must be made at the place of business from which the standby was issued. Right? Ultimate paying bank is the issuer. Right? So at that place, you can submit the claim. If a standby is confirmed, but no place for presentation is indicated in the confirmation, presentation for the purpose of obligating the confirmer on the issuer must be made at the place of business of the confirmer from which the confirming bank confirmation was issued or to the issuer. Right? Regular good they know prominence is confirming bank and the confirmer. This is also important. To comply, a document must be presented in the medium indicated in the standby. What do you mean by medium indicated in the standby? That means they will say either you have to submit the documents, right, under you can either you have to submit a hard copy or you can submit a request by email, electronic media. So the medium is different, right? Karanda puluwan nang claim karanda tiyenne electronic media, then you can send a Swift message or something like that, right? You can claim. But where no document is indicated, because the indicate how you have to do the presentation. Then if there are no medium is indicated, to comply a document must be presented as a paper document. In a scenario like that, it has to be a paper document, right? A document is not presented as a paper document if it is communicated by electronic means, even if the issuer or nominated person receiving it generates a paper document from it. Right? A document is not presented as a paper document if it is communicated by electronic means. No need. But the standby LCs should have agreed for that medium. And they have to indicate in the standby LC, right? In most cases, what they will do is, where presentation in electronic medium, the issuer or the person who is receiving the electronic record, they will get a printout and generates a paper document. Where presentation is an electronic medium is indicated, to comply, a document must be presented as an electronic record capable of being authenticated by the issuer. Right? If it is presentation is an electronic medium indicated, then to comply, a document must be presented as an electronic record, but not just a Swift message, 999 message. It has to be authenticated one. Right? If a demand exceeds the amount under the standby, the drawing is discrepant. If a demand exceeds the amount under the standby, the drawing is discrepant. Standby LC is for $10,000, but you are demanding $20,000. Then it is discrepant. Right? It's simple as that. Any document other than the demand stating an amount in excess of the amount demanded is not discrepant for that reason. Any document other than the demand stating an amount in excess of the amount demanded. Now, whatever the document it says, they says the total value of the project is 1 billion rupees. Total value of the project is 1 billion rupees. But you're demanding only 3 million rupees. You are demanding only 3 million rupees. Right? So in whatever some of the documents, there can be mentioned 1 billion. 1 billion is the value. But we are demanding only 1 million or 2 million. Less than that. Right? That is acceptable. But it is, if the demand is exceeding the amount on the standby is for 10,000, but you are demanding 20,000, then it is discrepant. Right? Again, you don't have to think much. All these things are common sense. An issuer is not required to notify the applicant. The issuer is not required to notify the applicant of receipt of a presentation under the standby. Well, a demand immediately given no. Right? An issuer is not required to notify the applicant. Applicant can know that. Normal right? Rule number 4. Rule number 4 is examination of documents. Examination of documents. Right? Now, this will, when you are studying this one, you have to see ISP rules 4.01 to 4.03, right? With UCP 600 sub-article 14A, 14A, 14D, and 14G. 14G. Right? Read the rule number 4. Demands for honor of a standby must comply with the terms and conditions of the standby. If you have to honor a demand, then the demand should comply with the terms and conditions of the LC. It's obvious. Whether a presentation appears to comply is determined by examining the presentation on its face against the terms and conditions stated in the standby, as interpreted and supplemented by these rules, which are to be read in context of standard standby practice. Standard standby practice. Right? Okay. The examination of documents is much similar to UCP 600 sub-article 14A. Rule number 4, an issuer or nominated person is required to examine documents for inconsistency with each other only to the extent provided in the standby. Right? LC non-documentary conditions ignore. The issuance date of a required document, may be earlier. Issuance date of a required document may be earlier, but not later than the date of its presentation. Right? The issuance date of a required document may be earlier, but it cannot be later than the date of its presentation. If you present it today, these documents cannot be a later date. If a standby does not specify any required document, it will still be deemed to require a documentary demand for payment, right? Rule number 4, continuing, a demand for payment need not be separate from the beneficiary statement or other required document, right? If a separate demand is required, it must contain a demand for payment from the beneficiary directed to the issuer or nominated person, a date indicating when the demand was issued, the amount demanded, and the beneficiary's signature. If separate demand is required, if a separate demand is required, it must contain the following things. We have to say the amount demanded and the date of the, say, if a separate demand is required, it must contain these particular things: beneficiary signature, amount demanded, a date indicating when the demand was issued, everything. A demand may be in the form of a draft or other instructions, order, or request to pay. It's normal thing. If a standby requires a statement, certificate, or other recital of a default or other drawings event, then, for example, construction of a building, then we'll have to get a COC, certificate of conformity, from the local authority, right? And that's a document, right? So when you are submitting, it's a part and parcel of the documents which you have to submit, right? If they fail to give the certificate of conformity, COC, then you are ready to demand. Representation to the effect that payment is due because a drawing event described in the standby has occurred, right? A date indicating when it was issued, and the C, the beneficiary's signature, right? All those things are, we are talking about the examination of the documents, right? And section 5 we talk about, and under section 4 we talk about the non-documentary terms and conditions, then demand for payment, formality of statement in documentation, and all those things. This long, lengthy article, right? There are about more than 20 sub-articles, in there, right? So I have put only the important ones. Rule number 5 is the notice, preclusion, and disposition of the documents, right? Okay, shall we take a small break to have a cup of tea and come back? Yes, 3 o'clock. Please take a small break, 10 minutes as our usual break, right? And we'll continue at 3:10. Today, stick to these sessions, right? I'm going to finish this thing quickly, and then I'm going to discuss with you. I'm going to give you a small test to all of you to do a MCQ questions, some MCQ test, right? So you all, I expect you all to come back after a cup of 10 minutes and join. I think in about 10-15, another 20 minutes or half an hour, I can finish it. Then after that, we'll go for the MCQ sample test, because what you are going to get at the test is basically based on whatever the test I'm going to give you. So when you check, when you answer it properly, you can be happy of your situation, or then it's I have to improve my knowledge. So when you are coming, when you are starting after 10 minutes, please bring or keep your UCP 600 copies with you, right? Then it's easy for you to answer the questions, right? It's not very hard, but tricky, right? So we can expect the similar ones at the final exam. All this time I used to give questions, not fresh questions, whatever the questions we have discussed in the class. So I'm going to discuss about 80 to 100 questions with you. So you are going to get 10 out of that. So if you do it with me, then 100% you can score the entire marks, right? Okay. Then we take a small break and we come back at 3:10. Okay. Here we go. Rule number 5 is a notice of dishonor. Notice of dishonor must be given within a time after presentation of documents which is not unreasonable, right? So in that case, what they meant here is immediately, without any delay, you have to give the notice of dishonor if you are not honoring the payment, right? It is like LCs. LCs, when it comes to LCs, this notice of dishonor or rejection, we'll have to give it after how many days? From the time you receive the document. After how many days? Hello? Can you hear me?
5 days from
Yes. 5 days from you receive the documents. Here, ISP 19, it's a little bit different, right? The notice given within 3 business days. Ours is 5 banking days. Here, 3 business days, right? Deemed to be not unreasonable. And beyond 7 business days is deemed to be unreasonable. So they say, which is not notice of dishonor must be given within a time after presentation of document, which is not unreasonable. Ours is very clear. Within 5 banking days. Now here they say within 3 business days is not unreasonable, reasonable within 3 business. And beyond 7 business days seems to be unreasonable, right? So what is the threshold we are having? If there's anything, any discrepancies, if you are dishonoring, the dishonor statement should go maximum before when? 3 or 7? 3 or 7?
7 days, sir.
7 days. It is 7 days. Right? Right? The time for calculating when notice of dishonor must be given begins on the business day following the business day of presentation. Same with UCP 600, right? Here, if you submit the documents on Monday evening, right? For LCs, under UCP 600, it starts, the business day start from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday tamai hambune. Here, also same thing. The business day following the business day of presentation. Right? Unless a standby otherwise expressly states a shortened time within which notice of dishonor must be given, the issuer has no obligation to accelerate its examination of a presentation. Unless a standby otherwise expressly states a shortened time. If they says notice of dishonor must be given within 3 days, that is a clause in the standby. Then we have to do it. You can't wait for 7 days. Then you have to do it within 3 days, right? If it is not mentioned there, then the issuer has no obligation to accelerate his examination of a presentation. But anyway, they have to inform within the reasonable time. According to the Article 5, the reasonable time means not beyond 7 business days, right? A notice of dishonor shall state all discrepancies upon which dishonor is based. Very much similar to LCs. When we are dishonoring LC also, we have to give them entire notice of entire discrepancies. Bits and pieces or later you can't include. An applicant must timely object to an issuer's honor of a non-compliant presentation by giving timely notice by prompt means, right? An applicant must timely object to an issuer's honor of a non-compliant presentation by giving timely notice by prompt means. So that means if the applicant comes to know that there's a claim, so before the issuer honors the non-compliant presentation, right? And if the applicant knows that it's a non-compliant presentation, they have to inform immediately, prompt. Otherwise, issuer will either honor or say that they are not honoring. An applicant acts timely if it objects to discrepancies by sending a notice to the issuer, stating the discrepancies on which the objection is based within a time after the applicant's receipt of the documents, which is not unreasonable, right? Failure to give notice of objection by a prompt means precludes assertion by the applicant against the issuer of any discrepancy or other matter apparent on the face of the document issued by the applicant. Failure to give notice of objection by prompt means, right? They have to give, otherwise that is, they will preclude the assertion by the applicant against the issuer of any discrepancy or any other matter apparent to the on the face of the documents received by the applicant. In other words, in simple, you have to be prompt, applicant has to be prompt, issuer has to be prompt, right? They have not given any time period for applicant, 3 days or 7 days or whatever, but they have given it only for the issuer, right? Then rule number 6 talks about the transfer. Like the LCs, standby LCs also can be transferable, right? So if the standby LC is to be transferable, then it has to mention so. Otherwise, like the normal LC as per the Article 38, it has to be mentioned transferable. Then only we can transfer. Here also you have to mention transferable, right? If they are not mentioned now, if they are keeping silent, then you can't transfer those standby LCs, right? Similar to UCP 600. Article 38. A standby that states that it is transferable without further provisions means that drawing rights may be transferred in their entirety more than once, may not be partially transferred, and may not be transferred unless the issuer, including the confirmer or other person specifically nominated in the standby, agrees to and effects the transfer requested by the beneficiary. Now, if it is a confirming bank also, they have to get their consent, then the issuing bank, and if you are transferring, you have to transfer the whole thing in entirety, not partially transferred, right? But under LCs, you can partially transfer. Under LCs, in the sense, this also goes as LC, but UCP 600 you can partially transfer, right? Where there has been a transfer or drawing rights in their entirety, a draft or demand must be signed by the transferee beneficiary if they are in a demand, right? The draft or demand must be signed by the transferee beneficiary. That's the second beneficiary. The name of the transferee beneficiary may be used in place of the name of the transferor, that is the first beneficiary, in any other required document, right? All these things I'm not going to discuss. The articles have been given, right? Then it talks about the assignment of proceeds, right? If an assignment is acknowledged, then how to do it, right? Very much similar to LCs, right? Then, because I have given this for your own benefit, we can get a printout of this and keep it with you, because it might useful to you if you come across any standby LCs under ISP 19, just to refer certain matters. Because if you sometimes it's difficult to find the ISP 98 rules at that time when you receive some things. But if you have at least a copy of this one, then you can refer to this and then have some sort of understanding, right? Rule number 7, a beneficiary's right under a standby may not be cancelled without its consent, right? That is cancellation of standby LCs. The beneficiary's rights under a standby may not be cancelled without its consent. Without the consent of the beneficiary, you can't cancel the standby LC. Same with normal LC. Normal LC also, who are the people who can cancel or amend an LC? Issuer, confirming bank, and the beneficiary. Those are the three parties. Here also the same. Consent may be evidence in writing or by an action, such as return of the original standby in a manner which implies that the beneficiary consent to cancellation. Right? A beneficiary's consent to cancellation is irrevocable when communicated to the issuer. Right? When the beneficiary consent to the cancellation is irrevocable. It cannot be changed. That's confirmed. Rule number 8 is the reimbursement obligations. The reimbursement obligations. You can go back to the first slide which I have given, the 10 articles grouped together, where payment is made against a compliant presentation in accordance with these rules. Reimbursement must be made by an applicant to an issuer, request to issuer standby, and an issuer to a person nominated to honor or otherwise give value. Right? Reimbursement, first the applicant should requested to issue the applicant who has requested to issue the LC should reimburse the issuing bank who has issued the standby. Right? So that means we debit the account and we will take the money. Then the issuer, the issuing bank, has to give value immediately to a person nominated to honor or otherwise give value. Right? An applicant must indemnify the issuer against all claims, obligations, and responsibilities, including attorney's fees arising out of the imposition of law or practice other than that chosen in the standby or applicable at the place of issuance. Always, before we open standby LCs, the applicant has to give an indemnity, indemnifying the issuer, the issuing bank, against all claims, obligations, and responsibility, blah, blah. Right? The fraud, forgery, or illegal action of others, or the issuer's performance of obligation of a confirmer that wrongfully dishonor a confirmation. Issuer's performance of obligation of a confirmer that wrongfully dishonors a confirmation. Right? Rule number 8 goes on, right, regarding the reimbursement obligations, right, of different parties. So it's for your information, right? A nominated person that obtains reimbursement before the issuer timely dishonors the presentation must refund the reimbursement with interest if the issuer dishonors. A nominated person that obtains reimbursement before the issuer timely dishonors the presentation must refund the reimbursement with interest if the issuer reimbursement. So if there's an intermediate reimbursing bank, right, and like bank-to-bank reimbursement, if those people have wrongfully obtained their reimbursement, right, before the issuing bank honors or dishonors the presentation, if they have dishonored, then they have taken the money wrongfully. So they have to refund the reimbursement with interest if the issuer dishonors. Right? The refund does not preclude the nominated person's wrongful dishonor claims. Right? Any instructions or authorization to obtain reimbursement from another bank is subject to the ICC standard rules for bank-to-bank reimbursement. Again, even this reimbursement is coming under URR 725. It's simple. Rule number 9, a standby LC must always contain an expiry date. Right? Or permit the issuer to terminate the standby upon reasonable prior notice or payment. Right? That is the timing. Here we are talking about the timing. Right? We have to have an expiry date, or they should permit the issuer to terminate the standby upon reasonable prior notice or payment. They can inform the other party, unless otherwise we hear from you. In contrary, we will be cancelling the standby LC on such and such a date. If you have any issues, please inform us before that date. So that's prior notice. Right? The rights of a nominated person that acts within the scope of his nomination are not affected by the subsequent expiry date of the standby. Rule number 10, the last one, if a standby with more than one issuer, does not state to whom the presentation may be made. Presentation may be made to any issuer with binding effects on all issuers. If a standby with more than one issuer does not state to whom presentation may be made, presentation may be made to any issuer with binding effect on all issuers. If a standby is issued by more than, and they have more than one issuer, if you do a standby, then we have to state to whom the presentation has to be made, right? If you have more than one issuer, but presentation may be made to any issuer with binding effect on all issuers. But you can, in a scenario like that, if they have not mentioned, if they have mentioned a particular person, then you can submit the presentation to that particular identity. Otherwise, if they have not mentioned, then it can be made to any issuer, which will bind all the other issuers, right? That is rule number 10. So those are, in nutshell, I have discussed, right? But it is very difficult to understand. Not like even URR you can understand because you are doing day-to-day operations, trade guys. You are involving in bank-to-bank reimbursement. But here in Sri Lanka, the practice is almost zero. ISP 98, there are, but practice is almost zero. But as a trade practitioner, you should know, you should have some awareness about the ISP 98 and the standby letter of credit, right? So that's why I have discussed, even in the syllabus, we are having ISP 98, which we have to touch, right? So I have given you the 10 rules in a nutshell, right? So in case if you have anything, you can refer it. There's no point of learning by heart of this ISP 98, right? Because it's not worth, because we are not going to practice day to day. URR, UCP, then other one, what's the correction one? URC 522, right? Those are, we are doing it on a daily basis. We are practicing on a daily basis. So we have to have a thorough knowledge about on those things, right? Others, only if there's any issue. Only if there's any issue, right? Unfortunately, what I have seen is, even I have seen questions asked by DABF people, right? DABF, majority are non-trade guys. Majority non-trade guys. I don't know why these people are asking, testing students on URDG articles, right? But what they might be thinking is it's in the syllabus and we are asking questions, right? But don't worry, I'm not going to ask any questions on ISP 98 articles. But generally, there will be questions. General questions will be there, right? I'll give you some example and some sample questions in time to come on ISP 98, right? Now, I was talking to you about having this I think this one is already uploaded to your system. PIT sample MCQ questions. Right? Can you see this one?
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
can
sir.
see. Yeah, okay, fine. Now what I'm going to do is, what's the time now? 15:35, 3:35, right? You have 20 questions. I'll give you time to answer the questions, and then we will discuss the answers later. Right? That way it's good, because then you are at least you are giving a try. And when we are discussing the answers, you have to respond with your answers. You have to respond with your answers, right? Okay. Get a piece of paper and then jot down 1 to 20, right? In front of 1, 2, 3, 4, you can write the answers A, B, C, D, or up to Z, the way I have asked. Right? Okay. Metika kuliah ganda. Vinad 30 seconds is I think 1, 2, 3, 4, print roll. Dagan. Right? After that, do the first two. I'll give you 2 minutes each for a question. 2 minutes each. Right? Friend of mine. Finish? We can save the time if you can tell me once you finish. Read it carefully, because answers are almost similar. Answers are almost similar. So it is not easy. Looks like a simple one, but it is not easy. Third question is also there. Up to 4, have you finished? Yes or no? Can you scroll down now? Can I scroll down? Oh, you are still doing? No answers.
Yes, so we can go down.
You can go down, okay? Right. Next 3 questions. Okay? You need more time?
Okay, sir.
Others? I don't know whether you are going to get guarded by the others. We are all. If others
Sir,
are
can I have about
yeah,
can I have about 30
if
seconds,
others are
please?
silent, you can immediately object to this guy's okay, right? Otherwise, we'll take it.
Yeah, sir, can I have 30 seconds, please?
Huh?
30 seconds. Give me
Yeah,
about
okay, okay,
half a
okay.
minute, please.
I'll give you another 1 minute. That's what I said. Even 1 minute, 2 minutes, you tell me. Even articles, there's sorry, question number 7 looks like very easy, but if you don't know the exact articles, it's a bit difficult. Done? Done? Right, me? Hashini? Yeah, okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. 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 Question number 13, finish or you still need it? Have you finished?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Finish. Others? Anybody wants? Tell me. I can keep it. Okay. $14, $15, $16. Question number 16, read it carefully because sometimes you jumped with the answer without reading it properly. Okay. Do you want more time? Do you want more time?
Okay, sir.
Okay, right. Done? Tell me when you are finished. Okay. Have you finished? Yes or no?
Okay, sir.
You need more
Yes.
time? Right. What I will do, I will give you a few seconds and again I'll go back to the first 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll give you if you have missed one of the things and if you have second thoughts, right, you can do the corrections, right? Just have a glance on your answer whether it's okay, right? 1, 2, 3, anything, if you are suspecting the answer is wrong, you can just double check. Check your answers and see. Okay. Shall we discuss the answers? Shall we discuss the answers? Okay, ready?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
But only thing, only few people are talking. Ajit, Sumudula, keep them Kevin. Others are not talking, but this particular one, because we are not meeting physically, no. So what you have to do when I ask you the answers, right? Okay. For example, if Ajit says answer A, question number 1, answer A. But if Bradney answer is B, please tell that, because We don't know whether Ajit is correct or Bright is correct. Right? But if somebody is having, Kevin is having another answer C, then he has to come out with that answer. So don't think the first person who is giving the answer is correct. He may be always wrong. Right? So you give your answers, then we will discuss the answers. Right? Okay. Question number one. Among the kinds of documentary credits subject to UCP 600, from which can the beneficiary get two banks' irrevocable undertaking to pay if compliant documents are presented? A, B, or C?
C.
Yeah, somebody said C. Any other answers?
C.
C. All are C?
C.
You මොනවද මේ ළමයින්ට ගන්නලා තියෙන්නේ? So all say C.
Can it be B, sir?
You said C, B? Ahurane. Correct answer is C. Confirm trade. Mama keep it. මොනවද මේ ළමයින්ට උගන්ලා තියෙන කියලා අනෝට හිතනවා sure නෑ. එහෙනම් C sure නැතුව ගියේ ළමයින්ට. Right? You had to firm. නැත්නම් අර B කිව්ව එක නම් C දාලා ඇති. හැබැයි ඉතින් මම අර එහෙම කිව්වා ළමයින්ට මම මොනවද උගන්ලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා අහුවුණා ඩක් ගාලා. Right. Question number 2. Which transport document of the following is not a good title? It's not a title document.
C. Airway bill.
C. Airway bill. Any other answers?
B.
B. Multimodal transport document.
B.
So, දන්නේ නැහැ නතු උසන්න කියන්නවත්. What is the correct answer? What about A? A is correct?
Is
A is
title
correct. It's a title document. Then, which transport document of the following is not a good title? Is Airway bill. C. Multimodal transport document is also a title document. It's a multimodal BL. Multimodal BL. Right? So, Airway bill is not a transport document. Is C. I don't know how many people have got. Once we finish, I will ask who got 20 out of 20 and 19 out of 20 like that. Then you tell me your name, right? Then hadala dan depa borukaran depa. Be honest to you. 3. Question number 3. Under an irrevocable credit, who must undertake primary liability for payment?
B.
issuing bank.
B.
B.
Answer is B. Issuing bank. Answer is B. Why applicant? Why nobody gave the answer applicant?
Applicant not take any undertaking with a written undertaking.
Yeah. And the other thing?
It is an irrevocable credit.
It's an irrevocable credit, yes. So why the ultimate payment liability is with the not with the applicant? Why? Because applicant is not a party to the DC contract, right? Only the issuing bank. So answer for 3 is B. 4, with reference to the expression transshipment not allowed. Transshipment not allowed is not a binding term under the credit transaction. A, B, or C.
Air transportation.
Air transportation. Air transportation is transshipment not allowed. It's not a binding thing. It's not a binding thing. Number 5. Silent confirmation is an arrangement made between what do you mean by silent confirmation? What do you mean by silent confirmation? We know bank confirmation. What is silent confirmation? Are banks adding silent confirmation to LCs? So some banks, they do, but this is high risk. Because if according to the UCP Article 8, to add confirmation, the issuing bank has to nominate a particular bank to add confirmation. They have to nominate a particular bank to add confirmation, right? Now, if they have not mentioned that LC is to be confirmed or anything, they are silent on the confirmation, but the seller says, I want to get this LC confirmed. LC confirmed by the advising bank. Then it is arrangement between the beneficiary and the advising bank. Therefore, the answer is A, beneficiary and the advising bank, right? But it is high risk. Issuing bank will not undertake any responsibility at all, because without their knowledge, these people have gone two steps further and added confirmation, silent confirmation to the LC. Now, silent confirmation is something we can see in other countries. When I was working for HSBC, I used to add silent confirmation, but even the FIM says, FIM functional instruction manual says we should not add silent confirmation without the head office approval or higher authorities approval, because as trade finance managers or heads, we all are human beings, right? So we don't know the risk of the other party that we are going to confirm. So because of that, it is very, very tricky and risky. But it's a silent confirmation is an arrangement made between beneficiary and the advising. Therefore, the answer is A. Ajit, you got it correct? Correct?
No, sir.
No. What is your answer?
B.
Issuing bank and advising bank. No, brother. There is normal confirmation. Issuing bank and the advising bank is an arrangement made between those two parties. That's for a normal confirmation, right?
Okay.
Shanika, have you done it?
Yes, sir.
Right. A credit can be transferred. A credit can be transferred. What's the answer? A, B, or C?
A.
A. From the first beneficiary to the second beneficiary. B is completely wrong. right? A from the first beneficiary to second beneficiary. You can't transfer from second to third. Number 7. Number 7. What's the answer? A, B, or C?
A.
As for a freely negotiable credit, which bank acts as a transferring bank? Good question. Who said A? Who?
Ajit.
Sorry,
Ajit.
Ajit. You said A. Any other answers?
C, sir.
C. Any negotiating bank. Any other answers? Right now, what's the answer you gave?
A, sir.
A. The advising bank. As for a it's a freely negotiable credit. Which bank acts as a transferring bank? Make a freely negotiable bank. Just read Article 38. Article 38 B. Article 38 B. B exact wording. Article 38B, second para, it says, transferring bank means a nominated bank that transfers the credit or in a credit available with any bank. The credit available with any bank. That make any bank freely negotiable, right? A bank that is specifically authorized by the issuing bank to transfer, and that transfers the credit. It has to be specifically authorized bank. It has to be a specifically authorized bank. I knew everybody will go for A, advising bank, and some may go for C. But nobody gave the correct answer B. Anybody got the correct answer B? None.
Yeah, I've got some.
You got. What's your
Yeah.
name?
Mario.
Mario. So only one person got it.
This is question number 7, right?
Question number 7.
Yes, I've got it.
Yeah, this is Article 8B, second para. Right? Ekadam avana kiyawanna. You see, kiyawanna. Daha para kitara kiyawanna. 8. 8. You're lazy. What is that?
It's B.
One says B, letter of credit. 9.
B. No.
B.
Yeah, B.
Not A. Answer is B. No. Why? LCs are used for domestic purpose also. Local LCs, neither. Yeah, LCs are used for domestic purpose. We have how many local LCs we open in a day? Number 10.
Both of the above.
Rules promulgated by the International Chamber of Commerce and UCP. Answer is C. Both of the above. 11.
Same B. Sorry, C. Both of them.
Both of above. It is beneficial for the exporter and the importer. 12.
Answer A.
Sellers must trust that the bank issuing letter of credit is valid and that the bank will pay as agreed. If sellers have any doubts, they can use a
Confirmed letter of credit.
answer A. Confirm letter of credit. Confirm letter of credit. I hope everybody got the correct answer. Right? Number 13. Number 13. Make on the revision na koglande. A, B, C, D, E, F. The answer, Steve. Letter of credit is essential. Which among the following function is suitable regarding the requirement of letter of credit? A, B, C, D, E, or F?
All of the above.
Answer is E.
Answer is E.
All of the above.
Yes.
All of the above. Any other answers? Any other answers? Shall we go one by one? Importers and exporters regularly use letter of credit to protect themselves. අපි ඒකින්දද letter of credit is essential වෙන්නේ. Is it correct? Importers and exporters regularly use letters of credit to protect themselves. Is it correct?
Yes.
Please discuss. Others?
Yes, it's correct.
It is correct. So, is this the only thing they can have to protect themselves? Why can't they do open account and have a standby LC or a bank guarantee? Forget about the standby LC kuwama ekat LC කියලා හැම ඔයගොල්ලෝ ආගේ කරන්නේ. What about a bank guarantee? Covered under a bank guarantee.
LC is more secure than other payment methods.
Yeah, LC is more secure. That's a different thing. උත්තරේ දෙන්න මොකද්ද? මම දෙන්න ඕනේ උත්තර. දීලා දෙන උත්තරේනේ ගන්නෙ. Importers and exporters regularly use LC to protect themselves. ඔන්න බාර ගන්න බෑ ඒක. B. Working with an overseas buyer can be risky because you do not necessarily know who you are working with. Right? Is it a point to use the LCs? While doing with LCs, can't we get screwed? I think I have done the risk involved in international trade with you. I have given you examples, stories, right? We open the LCs, and if you don't format it properly, if you don't ask for the correct documentation, it is not going to work. You are not going to get covered. You will get screwed by the exporters, right? Because we are dealing only with the documents, not with goods, right? මේව හැම පැත්තෙම වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔගොල්ලෝ හිතන්නේ නැති පැත්තක් මේ යන්නේ. ඒක මම උතර ලේසියෙන් බලන්න නෑ කියලා. Buyer may be honest and have good intentions, but business troubles or political unrest can delay payment of seller. Right? This is good for collection. This is good for collection, right? Buyer is honest and good intention, but because of business troubles or political unrest, there can be delays. But if you open LCs, it's always prompt, right? මේක වෙනස්. දැන් තේරෙනවද ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ බලපු විදිය වැරදි කියලා. එකපාරට බලුව ගමන් උත්තර ටික හරි කියලා තේරෙන්නේ. Communication can be difficult across thousands of miles and different time zones. That is not an answer to have letter of credit. It's essential කියන්න බෑ. Right? How can you overcome that problem with the letter of credit? The most important thing is between the buyer and the seller, the sales contract. Right? So therefore, the correct answer is F. I don't think anybody has given that answer. None of the above. You all must have given E. Answer is F. 14. Make a දකින විදිහට හිතන්න එපා. වෙනස් වෙන විදිහට හිතන්න යනවා. Letter of credit are usually issued by, what's the answer? A, B, C, or D? What is the answer?
C, both of them.
C.
C. Anybody says A? Only A? No. LCs are usually issued by banks as well as financial institutions. So the correct answer is C, both of the above. 15. Besides the banks and financial institutions, letter of credit can be issued by insurance companies, mutual funds, both of above, none of the above. A, B, C, or D?
D, none of the above.
None of the above. Who gave that answer?
Shanita, sir.
Chanita. Any other answers? Ajit? Ashini? Janitra, you are silent. What is your answer? Kevin, what's your answer?
D.
B. B or D, you said?
None of the above. None of the above.
None of the above. Any other answers? Answer is C. D is wrong. That cure. Even the insurance companies can issue LC scalar while we were discussing about the ISP 98 articles. Within the Banco, in LCs can be opened by the insurance companies, but ISP and ISP 98, it will be issued only by the bank scalar. Within 2 hours, you forget it. Right? Even the mutual funds, they issue. We are only thinking about the Sri Lankan environment. Internationally, insurance companies, mutual funds, banks, financial institutions can issue. Do you know that insurance companies, mutual funds, that they are having SWIFT arrangements? They also have SWIFT arrangements. In America, mutual funds are a massive one, bigger than banks. Right?
So what is mutual funds?
Mutual funds is they raise, it's like savings funds. It's like savings funds, right? Investments, right? They get the mutual funds and then get invest those money in other funds, right? Not bearing, American Fidelity, those are mutual funds, right? American Fidelity is also a mutual fund, not bearings.
Is
And they are,
IFC?
not IFC. IFC is a government, international organization. IFC is a part of IMF now. Well, not IMF. World Bank නෙමෙයි. World Bank එකේ. World Bank එකේ ආම් එක IFC කියන්නේ. හරිද? අර කියන්නේ වෙනම American Fidelity Fund, North Bearing Fund. Those are මට ඔය දෙක කටපාඩම් මොකද මේ I invested in those two mutual funds. They were giving very good return on our shares, right? This happened in 2000. I invested quite a lot. I think it's about $20,000 or something. $20,000 මගේ හැටියට ලොකු amount, මට ලොකු amount එකක්. And 2001, because of the 9/11 attack, all the mutual funds crashed. And ultimately, my 20,000 came down to 5,800 or something. Total loss. So I waited. After waiting for 6 years without getting any dividend, nothing, just managed to gradually it started picking up. When it came to 16,000, I sold the shares. My total loss is more than $10,000 because interest, my return, nothing. Right? So mutual funds, ලොකුට කරනවා. Fidelity, not bearing again, the So answer is 15C. 16. Which among the following definitions are wrong? A, B, C, D, E. Make it lazy. What is the answer? What What is your answer? Answer for 16? Answer for 16?
E.
E.
Not the above.
None of the above. Very good. None of the above. E. 17? The bank with which credit is available to seller called
B.
Nominated bank.
Nominated bank. Answer is correct. The bank with which credit is available to seller called nominated bank. Right? 18. If no bank is mentioned on the credit as nominated bank, then
All banks are nominated. B.
B. All banks are nominated. All banks are nominated, can we? Another
Any
word?
bank.
Any bank. Right? Available with any bank. (19) Which among the following is correct about term revocable in letter of credit? If by an issuing bank that established the LC manipulate the letter of credit, is it correct regarding a revocable? Who are the parties? Who are the parties of a LC? Issuing bank, then confirming bank, if any, and the beneficiary. Right? Now, if by an issuing bank that established the letter of credit manipulate the letter of credit in a revocable, it is correct. It can happen. It can happen. And it has happened. Right? That is why we are not allowing revocable credits. Any correction made without informing or getting permission from the seller. Is it correct? Is it correct? Come on, guys. Answer. Is it correct?
Yes.
Yes, it is correct. Then all LCs are irrevocable. All LCs are irrevocable. And because of that, this type of LC is obsolete. Is it correct? Is it correct?
Yes.
Yes. Then what is the answer?
Answer is D. All of the
Answer is D. All of the above. All of the above. कितने का हर देगा? Technical man asked out.
Ajit.
Ajit, hurry. Very good, Ajit. Give it up. 20. Last one. Which is correct about irrevocable letter of credit? Which is correct about irrevocable letter of credit? A, B, C, or D? You have gone through, I don't have to go through it again. Give me the answer.
C. Both of the above.
Yes. Answer is C. Answer is C. Both of the above. Right? Okay. You think it's easy, but now you find it is not so easy. Can you tell me anybody who got 20 out of 20? Out of 20? Huh? Anybody got 20 out of 20? कितने हो गए? और 19 out of 20? Nobody. 18 out of 20? 17? 16?
I got 16. Ajit.
You got 16. Ajit there?
Yes.
Yeah, Ajit. We had to give a clap to you because you scored the highest mark, 16 out of 20. Right? Keep it up. Then that can happen. Then 15, 14.
I got 14, sir.
You got 14. Very well. Chanita there?
Harshani.
Harshini, you got 14. Good. Have not very good, huh? Have 13?
I got 13, sir. Shanika.
Shanika, you got 13. Then? Huh? Any other? Afsha? How much? How much? Right. Okay. So 13, 12, 11, 10. Between over 10, between 13, how in on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have 11.
Kevin, how much you got?
I got 11, sir.
11. Mario?
I got
Sir, 11, sir.
11. Then Shavindri?
Sir.
Huh? 12.
Yes.
Right. Brighty, how much you got?
So I got 10, sir.
10. Now you see the mistakes we have done. I think these exercises we'll have to do on a regular basis. So what I will do is, again, if I can finish certain areas before the stipulated time, if at least we can have 1 hour additional time, I will prepare these papers and always try to discuss with you. So before the exam, if I can discuss about 100 questions with you, then it will be a indirect, what do you call it, a revision class. Not a direct revision, but it will be an indirect revision class. It will be much better because you are thinking and answering the thing. Right. So thank you very much. I think it's enough for today. We'll meet next week.